In this video, we want to take a look at a second way to import data from the data collector. And this has to do with what do we do with points that are the same on the data collector as they are in our existing survey. Here I have points 1 through 8 that are the control points, the GPS control points that I'm using. I have the same point numbers in the data collector, but starting at assumed coordinates. And what I'm really interested in doing is filtering out the angles and distances out of the raw data and basically throwing the coordinates away, because I want to recompute positions based on these controlled GPS points. And these GPS points are holding their geodetic positions. That's why the latitude and longitude are bold. They're computing northings and eastings based on whatever my coordinate reference system is. So I want to hold the geodetic positions of 1 through 8 when I import the data. So let's take a look at a second option for doing this. I'm going to go to File, Import, and I've already selected TDS Raw in a previous video. I'm going to go into Settings and tell Traverse PC this time that I don't want to rotate and translate like we did earlier. Instead, I want this option that says Overwrite Imported Coordinates. And if I were to press F1 here and bring up the Help topic on this, I see there's a whole section on import, overwriting existing or imported coordinates. It tells me what I can expect with those options. What I expect with this option is that Traverse PC will look at an existing point as the data is coming in and saying, I'm going to really discard the coordinates that are in the data collector because I already have a position for that point in the survey. So it's going to use the point label and say if I've already got a point 1 in the survey and I see a point 1 in the data collector, I'm going to ignore the coordinates of point 1 in the data collector and reuse my point 1 that's already in the survey. Okay, so let's choose OK. I'm going to open up our message view and just clear it here real quick. We can start over with the details. And let's browse to a file that we want to import. It'll be the same one that we imported earlier. We're going to choose 2346 section 14 raw, and let's go ahead and import that. Again, it takes a little bit because we're reporting all this information in the message view. And when I'm done, I see that I have 310 points that got imported. Let's close this out and let's go back up to the top of our message view. This is going to look a little different than the details that we reported in the previous example. Notice that I see that I've got a point called 3 and I'm bringing it in as a stored point. But this time, instead of seeing the data collector's coordinates for that point, I see the geodetic position held in the survey for that point. So instead of seeing a northing and easting from the data collector, I see a latitude and longitude from the GPS point that already exists in the survey. And the same for position 1. So when I occupy point 3 and backsite point 1, I now am on my basis of bearing, and point 4 is going to come in with the coordinates related to the GPS points I started with. Okay? So everything's going to come in on my basis of bearing with new coordinates. If I go all the way to the end, I don't see any notes about relabeling points or rotating and translating because I'm simply reusing the survey points. Let's go to our point view, and here are the points that we imported. Notice that their geodetic positions and their coordinates are on our basis of bearing. They're where we expect them to be. Notice this time I don't have any 1:1 for the duplicate point 1, or 3:1, or 8, or 2. So Traverse PC really is just reusing those existing points. Let's take a look at the traverse that it created. It created Import Raw Traverse. Let's double click that to open it. And let's choose our Control 2D PLS that we created earlier. And let's go ahead and set the tag on that to draw it. Okay, let's take a look at our traverse now. This is going to look different from the previous example because I don't have the :1 points. So I really am starting at point 3. I really am backsighting point 1. So this is the geodetic point 3, backsighting geodetic point 1. And this time, instead of creating a position for point 2, I'm simply observing point 2, and that's why the OBS is here in the point type. So if I were to change a point type, I see that an OBS is an observation or redundant point type. And Traverse PC can use that to build the least squares network just like it can an equal sign in the description. One thing that's different about point 2 is that I want you to notice that the first time we encountered point 2 in the data, we create an observation to it. So we're not really recomputing it, we're just storing the data that was observed. Now we come down and we occupy point 2. So Traverse PC is actually jumping over to the control point itself, not the position that would have been computed from that data. And it's moving forward based on the control point position. Same way here when we see point 8, we're observing it. But if we were to use point 8 further down as an occupied point or a backsite, we would be using the geodetic position that we started with for that point, not the position that would have gotten recreated from the data in the data collector. I do want to just take a moment and show you that the raw data is all here just like it was before in the other method. And remember, we came down and we removed an observation to 101 and 5. So here's my observation to 1 that was a bad angle. Here's my control point 5 with no data, so I'm going to delete those just like we did earlier. And then in the previous example, we had to come back and tell it the bottom point here was a side shot. So let's change the point type to side shot instead of a control point. And Traverse PC knows now it's not going to include that side shot in the least squares network. However, it will recompute the side shot after we adjust the network if we choose to. The rest of this is pretty much the same, and I could do an intermediate least squares adjustment just like I did before. I could also come in and check inverses just like I did before. So here's point 17, here's point 6, and I could just as easily go in and check an inverse like I did before. Okay, I might see some differences again because I jumped over to point 2 here from the previous example, but I can do all the same kinds of checks that I did in the previous method of importing the raw data.